You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your PMP certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Engaging and supporting virtual teams means enabling distributed teammates to collaborate effectively and feel fully included, regardless of distance. This task has grown in importance as projects increasingly rely on geographically dispersed contributors. The definition centers on designing ways for people separated by time zones, culture, and technology to work as smoothly as if they were co-located. The outcomes include predictable workflow across locations, clear handoffs between contributors, and high trust sustained even without face-to-face contact. The project manager's stance is that of an architect of communication and inclusion, deliberately reducing friction created by distance. On the PMP exam, STEMs often hide virtual issues inside phrases like missed handoffs, misread tone, or tool access gaps. The significance of this task is that project performance depends not only on technical expertise, but also on how effectively distributed people stay aligned. A brilliant schedule will falter if one region does not understand deliverables from another, or if tone in an email sparks conflict due to cultural misinterpretation. Predictable flow arises only when distance barriers are managed intentionally. Clear handoffs mean the next region or person receives complete, accurate work without guesswork. Trust grows when teammates know their contributions are respected and visible, even if no one shares an office. On the exam, answers stressing inclusivity and structure usually reflect PMI's philosophy. Virtual teams face unique sources of friction compared to co-located ones. Misread tone in written communication can escalate tension. Overlapping edits in shared files cause rework. Lag in responses due to time zone gaps slows decisions. Tool sprawl. Using multiple platforms without standardization creates version confusion. Security or compliance challenges arise when remote access is not properly governed. The project manager's task is not to eliminate distance, but to manage it so collaboration remains seamless. The PMP exam often presents these problems indirectly, requiring candidates to recognize them as virtual team impediments that demand structured solutions. Inputs to supporting virtual teams begin with understanding the distribution of locations, time zones, and languages. Accessibility needs must also be considered, ensuring everyone can engage with tools and materials. Signals that performance is slipping include long delays in responses, duplicated or conflicting work, or growing meeting fatigue among team members. Other warning signs include undocumented decisions buried in chat threads and security risks from informal workarounds. The project manager must treat these as structural issues, not individual failings. On the exam, correct answers usually emphasize systemic fixes, clarifying norms, standardizing tools, or documenting decisions rather than blaming individuals. One clear signal of virtual team dysfunction is overlapping work. Without clarity on who owns what, multiple people may attempt the same task, often in conflicting ways. Another is rework, created when expectations are misunderstood across regions. Meeting fatigue is a less obvious but equally damaging signal. When people spend hours on video calls that span time zones, productivity and morale both decline. Tool sprawl, multiple chat apps, file repositories, or task trackers adds to confusion. The PMP exam rewards candidates who recognize these as signals of deeper process issues requiring structured remedies, not just work harder solutions. Security and compliance concerns are heightened in virtual contexts. Remote work often requires extended access to systems, but without proper governance, sensitive information may be at risk. Signals here include ad hoc file sharing, requests for unapproved access, or vague accountability for data handling. A project manager must ensure compliance by embedding secure practices into daily routines. On the exam, distractors often suggest shortcuts like bypassing controls for speed. The correct answer emphasizes adherence to security and compliance, even if it requires more effort up front. PMI consistently reinforces that value delivery must respect governance. Several principles guide successful engagement of virtual teams. First is adopting an asynchronous first mindset, meaning communication is designed to work even when people are not online simultaneously. Live time is reserved for decisions, alignment, and relationship building. Second is over-communicating outcomes, owners, and deadlines so that no one is left guessing. Inclusive facilitation ensures all voices are heard, rotating speakers, using simple language, and confirming understanding aloud. Finally, the principle of document once, link many creates a single source of truth. Teams know exactly where to find the latest information, reducing confusion. On the exam, answers usually stress async first, inclusivity, and artifact visibility. An asynchronous first mindset prevents time zones from becoming blockers. Instead of scheduling every discussion as a live meeting, information is shared in advance for review, and only decisions or clarifications require live attendance. This not only respects global distribution but also reduces fatigue. Over-communicating outcomes helps because what seems obvious in one region may be ambiguous elsewhere. Inclusive facilitation matters especially in mixed language teams. Leveling the language, pausing for confirmation, and rotating voices prevent dominance by a few. The PMP exam often rewards answers that stress these inclusive and structured approaches to global collaboration. Document once, link many is a principle that addresses tool sprawl and version confusion. Rather than storing different versions of documents in multiple places, the project manager ensures a single authoritative version exists, and links are shared wherever needed. This ensures that everyone, regardless of location or tool preference, is working from the same reference. It also supports governance, because decisions and artifacts are visible and auditable. On the exam, the correct answer usually includes consolidating sources of truth rather than proliferating tools or duplicating documents across systems. The process of supporting virtual teams begins with co-creating norms. This includes agreeing on time zone windows for overlap, setting expectations for response times, sometimes called service level agreements or SLAs, and defining meeting practices. Standardizing tools and file locations prevents confusion and accelerates onboarding. Naming conventions and versioning rules make collaborations seamless. Decision logs and change logs ensure that agreements do not vanish into email threads. Finally, publishing a calendar of rituals, stand-ups, retrospectives, demos, or governance reviews creates predictable rhythm. On the exam, correct answers often emphasize co-created norms and artifact visibility, not ad hoc fixes. Co-creation is critical because norms imposed unilaterally often fail. By involving the team in defining response times, meeting windows, and tool choices, the project manager fosters ownership and buy-in. For example, a globally distributed team may agree on 2 overlapping hours per day for critical decisions, while everything else is handled asynchronously. Rituals like retrospectives provide a monthly forum for adjusting these norms. On the exam, expect questions where the correct answer involves co-creation of working agreements rather than top-down rules. PMI emphasizes collaboration as the foundation of sustainable virtual teamwork. Standardizing tools reduces confusion and boosts productivity. When multiple platforms are used without guidance, version mismatches and lost context multiply. The project manager ensures a single shared repository for documents, one agreed chat platform, and standardized file naming. Decision logs provide traceability for governance, and change logs ensure everyone sees how agreements evolve. Publishing a ritual calendar clarifies when to expect alignment sessions. Inspecting and adapting norms monthly prevents stagnation. On the exam, correct answers usually emphasize standardization and continuous improvement over improvisation or one-time fixes. Artifacts and rituals serve as anchors for virtual team alignment. Working agreements record norms on response times, meetings, and communication channels. Shared calendars coordinate across time zones, while handoff checklists prevent dropped work. Asynchronous status updates keep progress visible, while live decision reviews maintain trust and alignment. Demos and retrospectives provide cadence for feedback and improvement. Onboarding playbooks guide new hires through setup, tools, and culture. Virtual social touches, casual check-ins, or non-work conversations build trust and human connection. The PMP exam often rewards answers that include these rituals and artifacts, rather than relying only on formal reports. Trust is the hidden currency of virtual teamwork, and rituals help sustain it. When people feel included in decisions, see their contributions recognized, and experience predictable collaboration, trust grows. Conversely, when handoffs fail, decisions disappear, or access is inconsistent, trust erodes quickly. Virtual social touches, brief time for personal sharing or recognition, compensate for the absence of hallway conversations in co-located teams. On the exam, correct answers often reflect the importance of trust-building rituals, not just technical fixes. PMI stresses that high-performing virtual teams depend on human connection as much as structure. In conclusion, engaging and supporting virtual teams requires deliberate design. Inputs include understanding locations, time zones, languages, and accessibility needs, while signals include lag, overlap, fatigue, and tool sprawl. Principles such as async-first communication, inclusive facilitation, and single sources of truth guide behavior. Processes include co-created norms, standardized tools, and visible logs. Artifacts and rituals, working agreements, calendars, demos, retros, and onboarding guides anchor collaboration and build trust. On the PMP exam, answers that stress structure, inclusivity, and trust building usually reflect PMI's philosophy. Supporting virtual teams means turning distance into a manageable variable rather than a barrier. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Agile environments rely heavily on ceremonies to maintain alignment, and when teams are virtual, these must be optimized. Stand-ups, sprint reviews, and retrospectives need to be concise and respectful of bandwidth limits. Long video calls can cause fatigue, so brevity and focus matter. Predictive projects often hold formal status meetings, but here the project manager can reduce the load by moving data-heavy updates to asynchronous dashboards, reserving live time for clarifications and decisions. Hybrid approaches combine both async dashboards supplemented by scheduled governance touchpoints. The PMP exam often embeds clues about delivery style. The correct answer reflects adapting collaboration to agile cadence, predictive milestones, or hybrid blends while ensuring artifacts remain current. Artifacts are especially important in hybrid contexts. Agile teams depend on backlogs, task boards, and definitions of done. Predictive projects require scope baselines, earned value reports, and change logs. Hybrid teams must ensure these are synchronized, so decisions made in backlog refinement are reconciled with governance artifacts like baselines. This prevents disconnects when stakeholders in different regions rely on different sources of truth. The exam often includes questions where artifact misalignment creates conflict. Correct answers emphasize translating agreements across both agile and predictive systems, ensuring all stakeholders see consistent current information. Security and compliance considerations are amplified in virtual contexts. Access should always follow the principle of least privileged team members get only the access they need to perform their work. Multi-factor authentication, or MFA, ensures secure logins and approved devices protect organizational systems. Data handling norms must be clear. Sensitive information should be redacted or sanitized before broad sharing. Vendor and partner access requires strict controls and disciplined offboarding when contracts end. Documenting exceptions and approvals provides an audit trail. On the exam, distractors often suggest bypassing compliance for speed. PMI always favors secure, documented practices over risky shortcuts. Access hygiene is often overlooked, but critical. For example, if a contractor leaves and retains access to repositories, organizational security is compromised. Offboarding checklists prevent these gaps. Similarly, sharing sensitive data casually in chat channels creates compliance risk. The project manager's responsibility is to embed secure practices into daily routines so compliance is natural, not an afterthought. On the exam, scenarios involving access or data handling often test whether you prioritize secure solutions, even if they add steps. PMI emphasizes that project success includes protecting data, stakeholders, and governance requirements. Consider a scenario. An Asia-based team completes work overnight, but the US-based team redoes the same task because acceptance criteria were unclear. Options include mandating more meetings across time zones, assigning a liaison to double-check handoffs, creating and publishing an asynchronous acceptance criteria template with examples, and scheduling a brief overlapping review slot, or escalating to the sponsor. The best next action is to publish the acceptance criteria template with examples and provide a short overlapping review window. This addresses the root cause unclear criteria while protecting time zones. On the exam, correct answers usually favor structural fixes over meeting overload or escalation. Meeting overload is one of the most common mistakes in virtual projects. When meetings consume hours across time zones, fatigue sets in, and real work slows. PMI stresses asynchronous. First practices. Use live time for decisions and relationships, not routine updates. Tool sprawl is another subtle but common error. Without standardization, team members spend more time searching for information than producing value. Inclusivity also matters. When decisions are consistently scheduled during one region's off hours, resentment builds. On the exam, correct answers highlight balancing workloads, equalizing time zones, and consolidating tools to reduce friction. A quick playbook simplifies the task of engaging and supporting virtual teams. Step 1. Normalize asynchronous communication, reserving live time for critical decisions and team building. Step 2. Standardize tools and file locations, publish working windows, and ensure naming conventions and access norms are clear. Step 3. Maintain a single source of truth for status, decisions, and handoffs, reinforced by decision logs. Step 4. Audit access regularly, document exceptions, and train the team in remote etiquette and security. This playbook reflects PMI's philosophy, structure, inclusivity, and trust. On the exam, answers that echo these steps usually represent best practice. Remote etiquette is an often overlooked component of this playbook. For example, clarifying norms about response times, meeting participation, and documentation reduces friction. Training new hires in these expectations prevents early missteps. Etiquette also includes small touches, like pausing for interpretation in mixed language meetings or avoiding jargon that confuses non-native speakers. These micro-behaviors foster inclusion and reduce misunderstandings. The exam sometimes embeds clues about cultural or linguistic friction. Correct answers emphasize respectful communication and structure that makes remote collaboration sustainable. In conclusion, engaging and supporting virtual teams requires balancing technical structure with human inclusion. Agile projects rely on iterative ceremonies, predictive projects on formal checkpoints, and hybrid projects on translation between both. Security and compliance are non-negotiable, requiring least privilege access, documented exceptions, and offboarding discipline. Scenarios often test whether you identify root causes, such as unclear acceptance criteria, and address them structurally rather than defaulting to more meetings. Exam pitfalls include tool sprawl, exclusion, and undocumented decisions. The best answers consistently highlight PMI's philosophy: async-first communication, structured artifacts, inclusivity, and secure governance to sustain trust and delivery. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.